Hello everybody, this is David Doub of Dusk Publishing, also known as the most interesting man in comics, and starting to do a new little live series called Comics Love, kind of go over the various books that have influenced me over the years and all that, so it's a great excuse to kind of look back at comics and all that. I know a lot of people accuse me of being too hipstery and I look back at stuff, but for one particular reason, it's kind of easy now to go back and look where we came from. That's one of the reasons I like to look back, is you get to see where comics have gone and enjoy them again and all that. But the reason I say it's a great time to look back at certain comics is because if you look, they keep doing great omnibuses. Like, I've gotten to see all of Astro Boy now because they collect it in this form, nice large format. I do complain a little bit because that one's a little small, but as you can see, like with Dark Horse, and they have where they have collected it in a much larger format than the original, so you get to see the gorgeous art all close up in a much more detail. But that brings us to who we're talking to today, and that's about Clamp. And I've been recently rereading Clamp because I finally was able to get more of the collected versions of R.G. Veda, which is, again, you can see it's in these lovely, large, oversized formats, so I can see the art better, and just something more meaty. I wanted to bring up Clamp because they are pretty amazing, but and I brought up the little history lesson. People kind of forget where they come from because people only seem to pay attention to what is current and new at the time. That's why if you talk to most people about Clamp nowadays, they'll go, "Oh yeah, I remember X-Holic," or Tsubasa, which is funny, people liking Tsubasa, because Tsubasa is basically their version of a multi-universe crossovers, like they did the whole Marvel DC thing, and taking all the worlds and having them cross over to like a giant multiverse. So it's really fun, but you really kind of need to know the background. You don't need to, they still are really great, but you get that added enjoyment if you know the background of all these worlds they come from. Obviously, the two leads are from Cardcaptor Sakura, excuse me. It was one of the older perennial favorites, kind of, they made their name, and it's amazing anime and manga. Not the Cardcaptor's American version, but, Cardcaptor Sakura. Of course, they also had some other good hits, like Angelic Layer, which is kind of funny because Clamp has always been almost shonen in the way they do things, and if you ever see the anime of Angelic Layer, it is definitely very shonen, the way they focus on the little fighting figurines and all of that. But in the manga, it is definitely more of Clamp's unique hybrid style of Sojo with shonen and all of that. So that is always a good thing. But then, of course, a lot of things get lost in the shuffle, because I never, Magic Knight Rare is amazing. Oh my goodness. I haven't opened this one while it fell apart. Wow. Of course, that was a mixing thing, so sorry, I have a thing against Stu Levy. I don't believe in his production values too well, so that's unfortunate. I have to get those replaced because most of my Magic Knight Rares are old mixing copies. Well, good to find that out now. But yeah, I wanted to go into also some more of the older Clamp stuff, which is an interesting one. And this is one thing, obviously a lot of people know about Clamp, but I love to emphasize, is that oh, thanks for that, C.A. Grayson. I'm using a new device, so I don't know if I need to be closer Clamp is a I wish we could pop things up when I'm doing things. Anyways, but yes, with Clamp is a very large. Well, sorry, I totally got off track with a stupid technical issue. I'm gonna stick with the phone because I didn't realize that the mic on this thing was crap. But you know, you live and you learn and stuff. It's not like I'm professional at this. And let's see. Yes, Clamp is for creators, so you get a lot of different stories. Because like Wish is definitely a much softer and personal story. The art style is definitely different enough than when you compare to a lot of their other things. Because then if you look at Clover, and yes, I am a little bit of a show off on Clover because I made sure to always have the it in the special format they originally have it in, but you can just see from the art and everything that how different it is. The design aesthetics and the plotting. Well, you can't really see the plotting, but they have so many different styles and such. Like this is one that is almost done in a heavily inked style. I try to go for the more old Japanese ink, you know, the prints and whatnot. But then they have really pretty, very different things. Like one of them of Clamp, I'm not going to say her name because I'm not very good at it. She actually loves doing kimonos. And so in this, she, you know, with her and her friends and other people, they do different kimono styles, and they talk about it. They go with the whole aesthetic because, you know, people don't realize that kimonos can be a form of art. I mean, obviously they're very pretty, but you can see all the different accessories and whatnot. But I'm going to go ahead and cut this short because I didn't realize the audio problem. I'll probably go back to the other device that works better next time. And I hope everyone did enjoy just a little bit of, you know, just getting a peek of Clamp and some older stuff that's out there and everything. And next time I'm going to focus on more European comics because, you know, I grew up on heavy metal and things like that. But I wanted to... oh, is it better, Beth? Can you hear me now? Or is it just you couldn't get in? Because I was told that there is audio problems. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is also the great thing with looking back is, because like we were talking about, you know, Clamp is some great things, but that's been released before. You can get stuff that you cannot have ever gotten before. Like this creator, she's an amazing... okay, that's good. I don't know. I'll blame it on Miss Grayson there, just to be mean. But like, this is an old great comic which was never brought over here, and as you can see, it's obviously of an older style, but it is such a gripping story. And I don't want to get into it because if you bring up the very obvious topics of it, like being set in a German boys' school, certain connotations come into mind, but it is much bigger than that. Okay, at some points, no, it's fairly, wears its influences on its sleeve, if you would, but that's what I was trying to get back, is you get to see a lot of this great stuff that you wouldn't normally got to see in the past, and also you get to see, you know, older stuff collected. So, no, Beth, it isn't yaoi. I'm always very particular about naming conventions, because yaoi, I mean, I forget the various names for all the different things, because yaoi is pretty boy sex, basically, and this is more shonen ai, which is boys love, but there is no out and out, you know, sex involved. And I always point that out because yaoi kind of became the catch-all. But that's not very Japanese. The Japanese term would be shonenai. Just like sojo-ai. Am I saying that right? Is, a lot of the girls love ones that people like, and they don't want actual yuri, because yuri is, again, out-and-out sex. And I don't even remember the ones, because it's funny, because even though we bring up yaoi, Japan has versions where it's not pretty men in love, like, I hate to say it, a lot of gay relationships, not the couples aren't, pretty girl boy things. They're, they're more masculine or whatever, and my Japanese is just rusty, so I don't know what those terms are. But obviously, being a hetero male, though, I still found this story very gripping, and I didn't mean to go off on just talking about this, is that, because it's just showing this has never been out, and it's now out. It's been out for a bit. That's why I had to pick it up, because the interesting thing is she's done a lot of great sci-fi stuff, which is how I got into her. I remember seeing one of her old animes based on her works called They Were 11, and it dealt with an interesting little side plot to where they had in They Were 11, they had a person who came from a race to where they were asexual until they decided their gender. But the trick is if you chose to be female, you still were trapped in the traditional female roles at the time, like, being a caregiver and all that. So even though the character was very feminine, they still wanted to be masculine because they did not want to be trapped in those roles. So it's very, it's very interesting how she deals with that sort of thing. And, but yes, I was digressing because I got to, because I was talking about all this great stuff. Because and I was, like I was saying, rereading Clamp again, and R.G. Veda is their first book that they did. It was their smash breakout debut. And it's funny, when I was first reading it, and the reason I never really got through it completely in the beginning was it felt very dated and cliched, because there was a lot of destiny and prophecy and, very old plotting techniques. But part of that was because they were using a background of old Indian mythology, and so that's part of it. But when you read it, a lot of the depth they put into it is really great in there, and it's really subtle, and I had to kind of, get through it all and give it a chance to see. Of course, the art is just gorgeous, and it's just and also what I love, though, is if you can see it, you can tell they had a H.R. Geiger influence in there, so that's a lot of fun. But as I got through it more and more, like this character, she brings such depth to it all, and I realize that that's one of the strengths and why it was such a breakout hit. Yes, it was very pretty and gorgeous, and they hit on those buttons, but they showed their storytelling skills, and really, shown and all that. And that's just to help reminded me, and that's why I wanted to talk about Clamp, to just, remind people that they are great, and they still are great, because, they still have new things coming out. This may look like their older Gate 7, but you can see it's still, look at that, it's a different style, but it's still familiar, because it's that, they got 4 creators involved. So even though, everyone knows, well, I saw this anime. Yes, I'm sounding a little judgmental, but, I want people to, it's okay to be a casual fan, and there's nothing wrong to being a casual fan, but I feel you're shortchanging yourself, and even though you see the latest, newest stuff, you're missing out finding the real gems like this if you just dig a little bit deeper. And it's worth the effort, because it's really not that much of effort. It's funny in this day and age, people talk about, it's hard, to find a comic book store or find this stuff. I'm like, no, you have the internet. You can find anything. Or you can find little know-it-alls like myself who would gladly tell you all about this stuff, and that's why I am sharing, so you can see this. And I love this book. I mean, I never knew much about kimonos. I mean, I knew them in theory, but I always associated it like, oh, well, that's just, you know, a girl thing, and I have no real association with it. But as you can look at it, it's really intricate. There's a lot of art. There's a lot of background to it. If I can go back to, let's see, yeah, I should have bookmarked some things, but they talked to one of the old shop owners. Yes, there he is. You know, it has history and all that. It just shows you how much that you can learn through comics by just digging a little bit deeper. And so that's why I want to share more about what influenced me and how much more depth there is to it all. And like I said, next week I will be going through some European comics, as I grew up on heavy metal and all of that. But let me just go through all these books one last time before we end, because these are all great. They're all falling all over the place. And definitely check them out, because this is kind of the foundation, or one of the mini foundations. Oh, I just love that, even though you can't really see it, but it's such a lovely thing. Later editions, they stopped doing that, because I guess they contractually covered how to do that, but, you know, whatever. You know, they're done, but again, that's... Oops. I'm showing you things you don't need to see. One more book. There we go. And that is David, Dusk Publishing, the most interesting man in comics. You can see I got so many other books to touch on and all of that, so I hope you stay with me, hear more about this sort of things, and if there's any sort of books you want me to cover or actually dive into, because I'm not afraid of comics. I'm not afraid of anything, really. I'm just more judgmental. People go, oh, try out that show. You say you try out this comic and all that. I'm willing to... thank you. Thank you, Beth. I may be covering the mic sometimes with my finger. Well, I'm glad we learned that. And yes, I'm just playing with filters while we're talking. Make you sick. But learn more of those technical issues. I'm glad people stop by. Check, you know, guess what? It stays on Facebook. So, you know, go ahead and check it out. And that is all. Yeah.